All right, y'all. Well, we have a good number of y'all on in the room, and I think we're going to get started. We just wanted to start. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. We're so glad that you're joining us. Before we get started, for the first portion of this session, we are going to kindly ask that folks remain muted for the time being. But we do want to give you some space to introduce yourselves if you feel like introducing yourselves. If not, please do not feel obligated. So feel free to use the chat if you are on a device that you can drop stuff in the chat feature to introduce yourself with your name and your artistic discipline, just so we get a sense of who's in the room. And we also invite you at any point during this session today, if you have any burning questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Since this is a session related to financial information, we more than understand the confidentiality of things. So if you would prefer to send them to Hannah or myself privately, we will ask them on your behalf anonymously. So please feel free to do so. So just some context of why we're here. I'm sure if some of y'all saw this on Facebook or saw this in your inboxes and were like, what the hell's going on here? We are I'm sorry, I didn't even introduce myself. Hi, I'm Ashley Shavankar. I totally failed on introducing myself here today. And so I am working with Artists Core New Orleans, and I'm also joined by my wonderful colleague, Hannah Krieger Benson from the Music and Culture Coalition of New Orleans. And we work with a group of arts service and intermediary organizations that have been meeting every week since the start of this pandemic. Now, we're over a year into the COVID-19 pandemic, and while things are slowly beginning to reopen, we recognize that the impacts on the music, arts, and cultural community will be sustained longer than other industries. Not all of New Orleans music venues are back in operation, and while the total amount of loss from this time frame for New Orleans musicians, artists, and culture bearers is unknown, we do know that the need for assistance is going to continue. So there's a few things that this whole time frame has revealed to us in particular, especially as it relates to accessing relief. It has showed us that the pandemic is really a gateway for taxes and paperwork and for accessing resources and how much of barriers they can be, for example, with unemployment, the stimulus, individual grants, business help, etc. Whether it's preparing spreadsheets of your gigs or starting an LLC, we ultimately hope this session will provide you with some information that you will ultimately benefit from. While we know that this doesn't make things more equitable in the immediate, today is a chance for us to share what we know and also tap into our wonderful community of experts and really considering how we can collectively move forward and vision forward and reimagine what a healthy music, arts, and cultural community looks like in 2021 and beyond. Again, this session is brought to you by a group of service and intermediary organizations, including Artists Core New Orleans, the Music and Culture Coalition of New Orleans, and we also are joined by some of our colleagues from Antenna, the Arts Council, Ashe Cultural Arts Center, Congo Square Preservation Society, the Musicians Alliance, Musicians Council for Fair Wages, the Musicians Union, American Federation of Musicians Local 147496, the National Performance Network, and the New Orleans Musicians Clinic. Hannah, I'm going to turn it on over to you.
Great. So yeah, like Ashley said, this is this moment in the pandemic after a year, it's sort of acknowledging how much help folks still need, and that there's new forms of help. How many people this year suddenly sort of ran straight into the barrier of unemployment because all of a sudden things that never seemed like they'd be important, like the fact that you are self-employed as a musician, was this massive barrier. So the pandemic has kind of revealed some stuff. And in terms of setting the realistic expectations for what this meeting is, of course, we can't cover everything about understanding taxes and government assistance. These are huge topics. The metaphor I've been using is a train station. We're kind of all here and everybody can figure out which direction they need to go and the next steps to get there. So the idea is that everybody can come away from today with a sense of their next steps or who is the expert to contact. And we have a whole bunch of resources and contact info for everybody to access, so that, again, you don't feel like you're just sort of wandering in the desert and lost. One of the big things that we want to just note is Ashley mentioned, of course, sensitivity and confidentiality around financial information. The underlying idea here is that stuff like taxes and paperwork and governmental forms can feel so incredibly daunting and scary and overwhelming and frustrating. And we want to try to, again, sort of just help make sure that everybody feels supported, and recognizing the sort of richness of knowledge in our community, and kind of make some of these connections. Specifically, I guess going a little bit deeper into the cultural economy space, we fully recognize that a lot of folks in the culture world deal all or partly in a cash economy, and that makes a lot of stuff more complicated, and it can make sort of reporting and documenting stuff more complicated. So in all of these ways, we're trying to sort of center that. And again, wherever you're at, there are next steps. There are definitely next steps. And anything that feels really sensitive and you don't want to put it in the chat, again, the session is being recorded. So if there's anything that you would rather not speak out loud, please, again, feel free to message me or Ashley in the chat. Any questions can be asked anonymously, and there are no bad questions. Like, all the questions that came in with the registration are great, and we're off to a really, really good start. And that's that. Yeah, the resource list is going to be made available. It's kind of divided out into different categories. And for right now, I am going to turn it over. The first expert that we have on hand today is Aaron Reddy. Aaron is a CPA. He does a lot of different things. We were connected to him through the Arts Council, who's another arts organization that we've been meeting with. And he is a wonderful expert, and he's going to talk a little bit about some stuff, both sort of specific to gig worker and cultural economy workers, and then also some stuff specific to this particular year, because this particular year was unlike any other. So on that note, Aaron, drop your wisdom.
Thanks. So guess what I'm going to do is go through the most recent stimulus bill and talk about what's in there that I think might be relevant to you guys, and other things that have recently been passed that are available. And then I'll go through some questions that have already been submitted. And then, if there's other questions, we'll open it up after that. And I guess, if you have someone while I'm talking, submit them to the chat or however. But first I'll just go through briefly what's in the most recent bill. I guess the main thing that everybody's heard of is the stimulus checks that have been going out. So a lot of you probably have already gotten them. If you filed your taxes for 19 or 20, you should be in the queue to get that automatically. There's nothing you need to do to go about getting that. It's an automatic payment. It's $1,400 per person and dependent. So, if you have children, you get $1,400 per child. The only caveat there is if you make 75,000 or less. So if you make over 75,000, it starts phasing out up to 80,000. So if you make over 80,000 a year in your most recently filed tax return, then you won't get it. You're qualified. If you're married, it just doubles. So if you're married couples, you made over 150,000, then you won't get it. If 19 was a good year for you, and then 20 wasn't, as was for most people, I would suggest go ahead and file your 2020 return as soon as possible. If for example, if you made over 80,000 in 2019, you made under that in 2020, the IRS thinks you made over 80, so they're not going to send you the stimulus. So go ahead and file your 2020 return to trigger that. If you received a refund in the past through direct deposit, they would have just automatically deposited that into your bank account. So you may have already seen it. And for those of you who have already filed and you haven't received anything, there's a website to go to check on it. You can see the status there. It's irs.gov/stimulus. coronavirus/get my payment. So if you just Google IRS get my payment, you can find it there. Another thing that's in there is an unemployment extension. So the unemployment opportunities that they added in the bills in 2020, they've extended that in 2021. It's extended until September. It's $300 per week. So it's 300 plus whatever the state chips in. I think the state's 250 roughly. So that way in Louisiana, that would give you about 550 per week. So that's extended. Self-employed people, gig workers are still eligible for that. So that was in there also. So yeah, if you're on unemployment, continue to file for that. You have until September to continue getting the unemployment. The other thing that they put in the bill was your first $10,000 is not taxable. So originally, any unemployment you get, that's income, you have to pay tax on it. But in this recent bill, the first $10,000 is not taxable. So if you already filed your 2020 tax return and you claim that as income and pay tax on it, then you should look into filing an amended return to get that portion of your tax back. The next thing, they increased the child tax credit. So currently, under the Trump tax changes several years ago, they put in place a $2,000 per child tax credit. So you automatically, everyone that has a child gets $2,000 credit per kid. They increased that to $3,600 if you have children under 6 years old, and it's $3,000 if you have children over 6 years old. That's also subject to the same phase out. So if you make over 75,000, you won't get that extra $1,600 per kid. And there's another interesting thing they've added to that is, the bill requires them to start making those child tax credit payments now. So typically the tax credit is something you would claim on your income tax return that you file at the end of the year. And so for 2021, you won't be filing that tax return until April of 2022, a year from now. So, so how does that help me now when I'm, we're in the pandemic still and I need the money now? So what they put in place was they're going to make periodic payments on that tax credit now. So I think beginning in July, if you have a child that's under 6, they're going to start sending out $300 per month. So you're going to get $300 per month, July through the end of the year, which would be half of your $3,600 credit. If you've filed your taxes and you've gotten a refund through direct deposit, they already have your bank info, and they're gonna just make those direct deposits. If you haven't, the bill required the IRS to create a portal so that you can log in and update your information, let them know how you want to handle this. That portal has not yet been created because it's tax season for the IRS. They're dealing with income tax returns right now. So they said that they would have that done by July 1st. So nothing you can do now on that, but if you have kids and you want to take advantage of that $300 per month for the second half of 2021, I would check back in July, check the IRS website, and they should have a portal by then. The next thing, the stimulus payments in 2020. So, the $1,400 I talked about earlier, that's a new bill that was passed in 2021. You guys probably remember earlier in 2020, there was 2 bills back then that also did stimulus payments. The first one was $1,200, the second was $600, and it's sort of the same way. They based it on your 2019 income. If you made under 75,000, they sent out those checks. If you made over that, they didn't. or they sent partial amounts if you made over 75. Well, if you ended up making under 75 in 2020, they're allowing you to claim that stimulus money that you didn't receive as a credit on your tax return. So, if you ended up not getting those first 2 stimulus checks, there's a way to claim that as a credit. So it's just something to be aware of, to look into. If you have a tax preparer or if you use TurboTax, make sure you provide that info. And if you're not sure how much you got, or if you don't remember, there's a way to check on that. The IRS website has a way to log in. It's irs.gov/account. So you can create a login there, and it'll tell you how much you received or didn't receive on each of those payments. And then last thing is the PPP. I'm sure you guys have heard of the PPP. There's a second PPP now. So if you got the original one, the latest bill created a second draw. So you're allowed to get a second PPP loan. The deadline for that is May 31st. So if you got the first one, you have until May 31st to apply for the second one. If you didn't get the first one, you can still apply for that one. I would go ahead and apply as soon as possible. Apply for that as soon as possible. That way you have time to get the first one and still apply for the second one by the end of May. I'm sure you've all heard of this program, but if not, contact your bank. The PPP is done through the banks. So if you have a relationship with a bank, contact them first. A lot of the banks aren't accepting applications for this from non-customers. So I would start with whoever you bank with. If they're not taking it, then there are some banks out there that are taking applications from non-customers. One of those is Fidelity Bank. I know is taking from non-customers, and I'm sure there's some others. But yeah, if you haven't applied for that, that's a great program. The other thing they've changed on that is the original PPP was based on your net income. So if you're a sole proprietor, you're a gig worker, independent contractor, you file a Schedule C on your tax return. It was based on your net income. So, the profit minus your expenses, your net, that's what they base it on. Well, this new law says you can base it on your gross revenue. So like whatever money you brought in before expenses, that's what we're using for the PPP now. So that's a much better number typically. So that's a great program. If you haven't applied for that, I would highly suggest that. And that's really it in the new bill that I think is relevant. There's some questions that have already been submitted, so I guess I'll go through those first, and then if there's other questions, we can address those too. So the first one says, if I receive PPP, will it be counted as taxable income? No, PPP is not considered income. Originally, the IRS said, well, if this is not considered income, then you can't deduct the expenses for what you spent the money on. But this new bill fixed that, so it's completely not taxable. No tax issues at all there. How do you properly get PPP forgiveness? So the forgiveness applications are done through the banks. So whoever you got your PPP loan from, contact them. Most have an online portal where you go in and submit your information. They're probably going to want your tax return. If you're Schedule C, independent contractor, they're probably going to want your tax return. But contact your bank. Your banker should be able to give you all the info there. Are grants considered income? So I'm assuming this is referring to the grants from the recent stimulus bill. So there was the main one was the EIDL program. So I'm assuming that's what this is referring to. So the EIDL, if you applied for that, you were able to get a grant, plus you were able to apply for a loan. So the original grant you got to the EIDL is not taxable. The loan is obviously not taxable, you have to pay that back, but the EIDL grant is not taxable. Now the state did a program with their stimulus funds. The state did a program called the Main Street Recovery Program. That's not the exact term, but it's the Main Street something. If you got a grant through there, that is taxable. So that the state grant is taxable. The federal EIDL, the one that went through the SBA, that one is not. Now, if you're talking about some other type of grant, I'm not sure. I'd have to know the specific one, but those are the two that were part of the stimulus. And
Awesome. And Aaron, just a quick clarification about the Main Street. There was a question in the chat that said,
Yeah.
at what rate is the Main Street program taxable?
It's just taxable at whatever bracket your income tax falls into. So like whatever tax bracket you're in, it's just ordinary income. It's not, all your income goes into the pot, all your ordinary income, and whatever bracket that puts you in, that's the rate. So it's just your normal rate.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron.
And also just where this is sort of actually previewing a little bit of a later question as well. We have contact info for I don't remember her title, with the Main Street program. And the plan is to connect anybody here today who, and this is sort of, again, going back to the train station thing, and to not sort of, waste everybody's time, but anybody with specifically Main Street questions to connect with this person, Avery, who is specifically in charge of answering those questions. So anybody who, I know Kelsey, you had a question about Main Street. Anybody else who specifically wants to be connected to the Main Street folks, please note in the chat, because that's absolutely a resource that we want to connect you to if that is relevant to you.
All right, so move on to the next question here. Is it better to have an LLC and pay my band and me through the LLC, or continue to operate as a sole proprietor? So the LLC is more of a legal issue. So the LLC protects you legally. From a tax perspective, there's no real difference in the amount of tax you're going to pay if you're an LLC or a sole proprietor. That's more of a liability issue. It protects you from, it basically protects your personal assets from being sued. So that's more of a legal thing. I don't think it's there's any benefit either way. Now I would suggest, if you are a sole proprietor, to organize your finances for your business separate from personal, whether you have an LLC or not. I would suggest that, but actually forming an LLC, for tax perspectives, no difference. How should I, as a band leader, pay out the band? I guess that goes back to the first question. If you're the band leader and you're paying out the band, I'm assuming you're paying them as contractors. So, however you want to pay them out, but you should issue them a 1099 at the end of the year. There gets into the issue of like, you start a business and have payroll. I don't know that that's worth it, but I would need to know more about the specific situation on that question. Should tax money be set aside from artist relief for end of year taxes? I would always say yes. If you're not paying in to the IRS quarterly, or you're not having taxes withheld from anything, definitely set aside some money for year-end taxes.
Aaron, I want to qualify that question real quick. When the artist relief there, I think, is referring to, there's been a whole slew of different grants, and sort of art, what's known as artist relief coming from nonprofits or whatnot. So I think the question there is, if you get, say, $500 from whoever, should you generally, and it's sort of a similar question to, are grants taxable? So I think that's sort of what that's talking about specifically, sort of pandemic era emergency grant type stuff.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, the EIDL thing, the PPP, that's not taxable. If you're just getting a grant from the NEA or some other agency, that's income. Unless there's been a bill passed that specifically says this is not taxable, then assume it is. So if you're getting it from a nonprofit or some foundation or wherever that grant's coming from, I'd have to know the specific grant, but I would say 99 out of 100 times yes, because it's typically not. Only time it's not taxable if there's a specific law that says it's not. Like with this latest bill, the EIDL and the PPP are not, but pretty much anything else, yes. So if you're getting relief grants from whatever organization, yeah, definitely set aside some of that, because if you're getting a grant, that's just straight income. They're not withholding any taxes for you. So yes, for sure. How to not have income work against qualifications for Medicaid and similar services. Yeah, I don't think there's any way around that. If it's whatever your income is, if that puts you over the limit for Medicaid, that is what it is. I don't think there's any way around that situation. Haven't been able to do my taxes since college. I've been afraid to start for fear of getting in trouble. Is there a tax system that can help me begin my path to filing? So I would suggest definitely don't put that off any longer, because the longer you wait, the bigger the penalties and the interest will be for not filing. If you need to look up like what's the most recent year you actually filed, the website I said earlier, irs.gov/account, you can create a login there. You can see what your most recent filings are, your transcripts, but that's going to give you where you are, and you can also see what income has been reported to the IRS. So if you've gotten a 1099 that's sent to you or W-2, you can look that up there also. But yeah, I would definitely not put that off. I would contact the tax preparer or get to tax or something. Definitely don't put that off. And that's the last one I had. Do we have any other ones that have come in?
Yeah, there's another one that came in the chat about PPP. And the question was, does PPP disqualify you from receiving unemployment?
So, yes. So the PPP, you have to report that as income, because that's income to you. I think you have to file unemployment. You have to report your wages periodically. So the time period where you got that in your 8-week period that they say that's your wages, then yeah, I don't think you can double dip. So you definitely have to count that for sure.
And Hannah, did you receive any additional questions?
I did not, no.
Okay. I just want to see if there's any additional ones that we missed from last minute registration. So, so there is also one more question that I think we should pose. Kind of the best steps to take during the year to make tax time easier or less stressful. I think we're going to talk about this as a thread in some of the other conversations, but from your perspective as a CPA, we'd love to hear from you about things that you love to see when they're brought to you during tax season.
Yeah. So the one biggest tip I can give someone is open a separate bank account for your business. That's the one simplest thing you can do, because typically, what I see a lot with sole proprietors or independent contractors is, you deposit your check in your personal account, you pay your business expenses out of your personal account, and then at the end of the year, it's just a nightmare to try to sort out what's my personal, what's my business related stuff. So if you have a separate account that you're doing all your business expenses through, then it makes it really easy at the end of the year, because you have this one bank account. Everything that's in there is a business expense you can write off. Makes it super simple. That's the one thing if I can give you, or have a separate credit card that you're going to use just for business stuff. If you want something a little more, the next step would be to get like a QuickBooks account, QuickBooks Online, or have a spreadsheet just so you're tracking stuff there. That gets a little more complicated, but the one simplest thing I can tell you is try to separate your business and personal as much as possible.
Looks like we got one more question real quick in the chat, which is just asking about if I have multiple LLCs, should I take account of all those finances all in one place, and then asking about maybe an additional LLC to audit it all. So how to deal with multiple business LLCs, I guess.
Yeah, if you have multiple LLCs, again, I would have a bank account for each LLC. You're gonna have to report those separately since they're different businesses. I guess one thing you could do is have one LLC that owns all the other ones. That way you can consolidate it into one. If you're trying to simplify it, you could have one LLC that owns the other ones. I guess I would need to know a little more about, is there a need to have all the separate LLCs? If not, you could probably just operate under one unless, there's some specific reason you need multiple ones. But yeah.
Great. Let's see. I think the next sort of thing we're going to kind of pivot to, well, Aaron, thank you. That there was a lot in there. And again, hopefully folks are kind of hearing things that make their ears perk up and like, okay, that's relevant to me. So the idea is then we're going to kind of just pivot real quick. We have a couple of working musicians who we have asked to just kind of, again, be kind of peer experts, with the idea being sort of asking and answering questions from the ground level perspective. So we've got Margie and Smoker. Let's see if we can, Ashley, can you pin
They are officially pinned on the screen.
And I'm going to just do some asking of questions, and the idea that they're just going to kind of, speak. Oh, you know what? Let's actually touch on that real quick in the chat. We're working on clarification. I believe if it's less than $600, then it is not. It is not declared as income, but we're doubled and triple and quadruple checking on that. So Stu, thank you for asking that.
If it's under 600, the Jazz and Heritage Festival is not required to notify the IRS of that money. So
great.
Yeah. But I mean, technically, if someone gives you $600, that's income, you're supposed to report it. But if it's under 600, they don't have to report.
Okay. May I speak?
Yeah, go right ahead, Stu.
Just a question. I did get a $1,000 grant from Music Cares. They never sent me any kind of 1099 for it. Should I be reporting that?
I mean, you should. you could go to that irs.gov/account, and you could look up and see if they reported that to the IRS, and it somehow it's like, the 1099 got lost in the mail or something like that. It could be the case, but you can go there and see if you can run a transcript there and see if it was reported.
Okay, thank you very much.
Boyana's question in the chat about Jazz and Heritage, which, if anybody doesn't know, it was a $500 grant for musicians, about reporting that to unemployment as income, which I guess is different than the IRS, of course. Aaron,
Yeah, I mean, you technically should. Your income for the period that you're reporting to the unemployment office, yeah, you technically, any income you get, you're supposed to report to them.
I mean, sort of going back to the framing at the beginning, we fully recognize that we're in this space of like the answers to some of these questions are technically yes, or sort of like, we're definitely in a space with that kind of feel. And again, just acknowledging that like super transparently.
Yeah, as a CPA, I'm happy to tell you what you're supposed to do, but I'm just, I'm telling you what you're supposed to do.
Beautiful. Okay, we're gonna just kind of keep going in a similar format, asking some questions with Margie and Derek. You guys are here. So this is kind of a similar question to what was just asked, but it's not from the CPA point of view, but as working musicians and band leaders, kind of what is either something that you wish you'd known when you started out in this business, and or what is something that you do throughout the year to make your tax filing easier? Give us your working musician wisdom.
Well, it took me a couple of years to understand what a 1099 was. When you get paid by a festival and then you pay your bandmates, and then at the end of the year, if you don't, report that you paid them out, then you're stuck with paying all of the taxes on it. And there were a couple of years there where I got not audited, but the IRS wrote me a letter saying, you owe us a whole lot more than you think you do. And it was because I didn't report that I paid out my bandmates. So that was the one thing that I learned about, and I now, before I had a 9-to-5 job, so I had a W-2 as well as 1099s. But now that I'm in the gig economy, with barely any W-2s, now it's, I have to keep track of all those 1099 to make sure that I paid out and, kept a little for myself. But, it's really complicated if you don't, if you don't keep track of it.
Completely.
Well,
yeah.
What I learned after years of unfortunate tax situations is what Aaron was saying earlier, like you have to keep your business and your personal accounts separate. That's number one. Two, having a brass band is really difficult just because I'm 5 people deep on every instrument. So one, just trying to keep up who's on the actual gigs was difficult for me at first because I've always been in bands where it was the same 5 people or the same 6 people. So I started a spreadsheet where I just list every instrument and every possible thing you could do that I would hire you for, as a list. And then I just list who's playing trumpet on this gig and who's playing trumpet on this gig. And I pay all them through the LLC, and I pay myself through the LLC because I'm the personal baseline because I get paid more from the company than anybody else because I'm on every gig, right? So I use my own personal income that I pay myself as a baseline for everybody else. Then I have a general idea of what I've paid everybody that particular year. And so I 1099 them on things I have to 1099 them on. The accountant, you don't have to hear this. Pretend like you're not hearing this. You know, and there's a fine line between things you have to tax them on and things you don't have to tax them on. I mean, however you decide to maneuver that is sort of a personal choice. I mean, you could be seriously really honest with the government if you choose to be and declare all those things. But fortunately for us, fortunately and unfortunately, we get paid in cash a lot. So you could just decide what you want to declare when it comes to that. Again, it's about tax bracket and about income. So for me, it's a little weird because I'm an actor too. So I still get income from things I did 5, 6, 10 years ago. I get residuals and I have to pay taxes on all those things too, just as an individual outside of my. So for me personally, is the one thing I really learned maybe about 5, 6, 7 years ago was to keep all those things extremely separate. So that'd be my advice is to I don't need an LLC, but my advice would be to start one and to start paying all your people, including yourself, through the LLC. And just so and I tried it a few different ways. Like I did the payroll tax thing for a few years, and it was very I got very overtaxed because of that. I mean, and it seems like a pain in the ass to have to 1099 all your people, but that's definitely the best way as an owner of a business.
You guys are amazing. That's exactly the sort of, I guess, rich knowledge that we don't always recognize that we have all around us. And what I was going to say is if anybody, you know, I understand fully that, especially if you're dealing with a cash economy, it can feel really daunting to be talking about keeping bank accounts and keeping spreadsheets. And if anybody is kind of unsure of their particular next steps, like, again, please feel free to message me or Ashley privately in the chat. And there are a lot of people in the larger community who would be happy to kind of walk anybody through some like super basic type steps like that. So again, from wherever you're at, there are steps you can take, and you know, please reach out. Okay, to keep it kind of on track, I'm just going to ask one more question for this section, which is just sort of pandemic specific. And the question is some practices that either the pandemic taught you about sort of financial health or record keeping or anything, or some things that the pandemic kind of revealed as like, actually, that wasn't the best way to do it, and now I have a better idea. So anything like that.
Let me let Derek give his view, and then I'll chime in.
Okay. The main thing I've learned is that in our business, musicians dealing with promoters and club owners, what I've learned during the pandemic is that we have a lot more power than we thought we had. I mean, to be clear, I've always kind of thought that, but I'm just mean in general, like as a group of musicians, just in New Orleans specifically, since that's what we're talking about, I feel like we have a lot more leverage and leeway now, because I can tell you one thing, like during the pandemic, I've done every type of gig, right? Every type of outside gig, every type of social distance gig, blah, blah, blah. But the one thing I know for a fact is the gigs I made the most money on are the gigs that I've done on my porch. So with that becomes power, because like, why would I let you undercut me to play at your place on a Friday night when I could just play on my porch and make triple the amount of money and move my drum set 5 feet, you know? So it's more about control and hello, like, look how much these clubs have suffered without us. Half of them aren't going to even open back up, right? They literally cannot survive without us. So we should take that into consideration when we're negotiating, and just take more control of your stuff. You know, it's like, I don't know if any of y'all play spades, but it's, you know, if you play spades and sometimes like you win a book and it can screw you in the long run, like, and they say all money ain't good money, right? So it's kind of the same concept. Like, it's easy when you're in the gig economy and you're desperate, not desperate, but you're just hungry for gigs. It's so easy just to take any and every gig and not consider the outcome of that. And it especially sucks when you take a gig that you got underpaid for and then they tax you on it months later. You know, so you definitely got to be careful about that. Like, any gig I think I'm going to get taxed for 1099 for, I got to make sure I'm getting more than well paid for that. Because like you said, I need to have money for myself to make money on the gig, and also I have to be able to put money aside for the taxes I'm going to get charged for this gig later. So that's all I've learned, is just being very, you know, just being more accurate and just being more in control from, you know, because we were forced to learn how to do things on our own. And some of the things we started to do on our own became more lucrative than the things we have been doing. So we should just take that in consideration.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. I'm still not ready to go back into the clubs yet. I mean, I'm a singer, so that, you know, makes a lot of difference. But yeah, mainly because I know these clubs that are starting to open up, you know, they're not going to be in any position to offer us what they were making before, what we were making before. And so it's kind of, you know, it's like, I want to wait a little bit, you know, for this fourth wave to pass through, and then, you know, things will get closer to normal, you know. But yeah, I've learned throughout the pandemic that, yeah, I do like the intimate porch concerts, and, you know, the live streams, you know, at the beginning. I mean, sometimes I still do them, and they're great. People are really generous when they're just sitting in front of their computer, you know, watching you play. And that's what's kept me going, you know, like we have a fan base that we can't see in person, but, you know, knowing that they're still tuning in and showing love in a monetary sense, it's like, it really just warms the heart as well as fills the pocketbook. So, you know, I'm all right with that for now. And outdoor gigs, more outdoor gigs.
I really love, I feel like that was an unexpected direction, just in terms of talk, you know, I mean, but it's true, the physical landscape where we play music has changed, and that's a whole separate discussion, potentially. So I thank you both for all of that insight. And I guess if anybody has any other sort of, you know, peer expert questions, like, please throw them in the chat as well. And if not, I will turn it back over to Ashley to introduce Ms. Kathy for our next little segment.
For sure. Thank y'all so much, Margie and Derek. Appreciate your guidance as always, your insight, because, you know, this is how we all learn. We learn from each other. We learn in community. So we really, really appreciate y'all. We're going to bring up Miss Kathy Saloy next. And there she is on the screen. I got to find her on the screen so I can pin her to the screen, add her up on the screen. And so, Kathy, I'm going to turn it on over to you. Kathy is with Hope. Is it Hope Credit Union? Did I say the full title? I feel like
it's Hope Enterprise Corporation, Hope Credit Union.
Got it. Perfect. Well, I'm going to turn it on over to you just to chat more. And
Okay.
Yeah, we'll let you take it from here.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And so we're just gonna make a little more sense of everything that Aaron shared, and hopefully some action steps as to how you get there, right? So I am with Hope Enterprise Corporation, Hope Credit Union. So what is a credit union? So we are a financial institution, but Hope is not any ordinary financial institution. We're a community development financial institution, basically. So what that means is we are intermediary for different funding sources, and our main mission is to work with the underserved population, to work in economically distressed communities. And that's not always 100% of the time, but what that gets for us to do is to create products and services to meet people where they are. And we understand that it is really critical that everyone is bankable. And so our products and services do that, right? We have checking accounts and savings accounts that are free. When I say free, they are free. Now, there are things that can charge you fees, like if you overdraw your checking account, then there is a fee for that. But just having a checking account could be free. It won't cost you anything. And I just think that it is critically important that everybody has, and I'm not going to just call it a checking or a savings account, that you have a relationship with a bank. And some of the things that I am going to share or echo, Aaron absolutely shared that. So not only is it important to possibly have a separate account for your business, but to have a checking account and or savings account. But the biggest thing is to have a relationship with a bank, right? We have been a source at Hope, a resource for people that's beyond just depositing money in a bank, right? When it has come to things like the Paycheck Protection Program, people call us all the time. They call the branch manager. I really don't know what to do. I don't even know if I have the right documents. I don't even know if I qualify. I am really intimidated with qualifying. I'm really intimidated with going through the process. And we will connect you with someone that will take you by the hand and walk you through the steps. If there's other programs out there, if there's grant money out there, we could be a resource just to give you that. Many banks can. And so just having a checking and a savings account is not all that there is. It's having a relationship with a bank, a banker. It's a people thing more than anything, right? And so why is it important to have an account? Again, it helps you to build. And when I say build wealth, I'm not saying that it immediately makes you rich, but you have to take steps to get there. It helps you to take steps to better manage your money. If you have cash in your hand, it gets away from you very quickly. It gets away from you in the checking account, but at least you have some track of that. Any opportunity that may come along, whether it's a grant, whether it's another program, a federal program like Paycheck Protection, or some of these other recovery assistance programs that's out there, you have to have some checks and balances, something trackable for your income. And I hear all sorts of things like, I don't want the government in my business. I understand if you deposit so much cash, you have to account for it and you have to fill out forms for it. It is, but there is a limit. And if this is your business and this is something that you do on a regular basis, then you may not have to go through that process. But having an account is going to help you to have a plan for your money, whether you have a formal budget, whether you put something on your spreadsheet, whether you use a fancy spreadsheet, you will have a budget. And that's important to know. You never know when your next gig might be. And so when you do get money, you need to have some sort of plan for it. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but it needs to be a plan. It helps you to keep track because everything is in that checking account. What's coming in, what's going out. It saves you money. It's a free account and it saves you money. You don't have to pay check cashing fees. You don't have to pay, if you do have cash and you do have to extend a check or something, you don't have to pay for a money order or a cashier's check. So in the long run, it's going to save you money as well. It is a depository for everything. So again, it's a good place to keep record. When it comes to doing your taxes, I'm currently getting ready for my taxes now, and I have rental property. I can't remember all the expenses and all the maintenance that I did on the property. So I just go and I pull out my bank statements and I'm able to go through it. And I have all of the records right there that I can just have available for my CPA to do that. in the long run, it helps you to save money, right? It helps you to save money because you're not paying all these extra fees that I talked about when you have to pay for money orders, etc. And believe it or not, if you don't have credit and you go to apply for something for credit, sometimes they look for other credit sources. And those other credit sources are things outside of a credit card or a loan or an automobile loan. And it is knowing that you have had a history of having a checking account with a financial institution. Sometimes when you go to open up a checking account, they may check something and people think that that's a credit report. It's not a credit report. It's sort of like a credit history. It's sort of like a checking account history, should I say, but that's only out there to see if there's any outstanding debt that you might have from another financial institution. That will not stop you at Hope Enterprise Corporation, Hope Credit Union, from opening an account. We understand that things happen and we will still give you an account at Hope. So, you know, it also helps with just being disciplined with your money, just having some tracking system and having some sense of discipline with your money. You know, there's a rule out there that says that you should save 10% of whatever you earn. And, you know, sometimes with the markets that we serve, 10% is not possible, right? 10% is not possible. But I do think it's a rule that you should save something that you're not going to have to go back to in the next week or the next month. That could be $1, that could be $5, that could be $10, you know, but just put something away that will accumulate something for you. And as I indicated, your bank can be a resource. So Hope was involved with the Paycheck Protection Program, and it was open to anyone that was outside of being a member of Hope. However, because of the overwhelming response, we have not been able to open that portal after March 31st. So we are catching up, and so we possibly will before May 31st, but all of that information will be posted on our website. We are an SBA lender. So SBA has all sorts of loan programs out there periodically. And so we are an approved lender. And so generally, whenever those programs are out there, we are a lender that is able to take advantage of those. We do all sorts of loans. We do startup loans. We are a collateralized lender. So, you know, we may be looking for some collateral, but we do take advantage of whatever types of loans are out there. And we will get special funding periodically. Again, we are a CDFI, so we're an intermediary for funding sources doing, you know, different disasters or different things that may happen in an industry. We also connect with a lot of partners. And I'm happy to, you know, to be a part of this, but we work with a lot of different partners and technical assistance providers. So if there is something that we can't do, if there is a loan that we can't make, we don't just turn you away. We will connect you with someone that'll help you to get those financials together, to make sure that you get your taxes done and help you to organize your paperwork and whatever it is. We're going to connect you with the resources and with our technical assistance providers to ensure that you need to do what you need for your business. Your business, what you do for the culture of New Orleans is important. And so that's important to us. So, you know, we have a website. It's at www.hopecu.org. So there's lots of information on all of the products and services that we have. We only have 2 branches, but we're still big in the scheme of things. We have a branch on Oretha Castle Haley and one on Elysian Fields. However, we are part of a shared network. So you can almost go to any credit union around the city or anywhere and still able to conduct face-to-face business if that's what you want to do. So, you know, we are a full service institution, and again, ready to meet all of our members wherever they are. So I snuck on this agenda for today. So I only had a short time, but would be happy to expound on, you know, answering more questions or providing more information, more in-depth information on the products and services. But I think the biggest thought that I want to leave with you today is that if you don't have a bank, think about not only getting with a bank, but having a relationship with a banker, because it really opens up a lot of doors for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And I just want to open up the floor if folks did have any questions directly for you, just to allow for that opportunity. And we do have your contact info in our resource guide, which we're going to share out with folks in just a little moment. And we're also going to send it out via email. So if folks do have, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're actually at our time for any additional questions that have kind of percolated during this whole conversation, because we recognize this is a lot of information. And especially as we think about our taxes for this year, just we know it's overwhelming. It's a lot. So we did want to open up the floor for any questions. And if that's to any of the participants, and we also even have some additional folks on this call that we know can answer some of these questions as well. I'm just going to add pins back for some of our experts on this call, so you can see
We
them
also
all.
do have, we've got some more questions that had come in previously as well. So we can also kind of read some of those out and get some responses. I wanted to loop back real quick to one that had been asked earlier, which was just the question about if you haven't filed taxes in a number of years, where do you start? And the biggest thing I wanted to say to anyone sort of wrestling with that, because I know that's something that came up a lot, just this year, hearing about how that was a major barrier in accessing aid, is just to not be, again, like kind of to take a breath and recognize the support that's in your community all around you. And any of the folks on the resource list that we're sending, just ask them, just kind of take that first step. So I just wanted to kind of give that reassurance, because it really is true for anybody. But I wanted to throw that in while we wait and see if any more questions pop up in the chat.
There is one that popped up in the chat for Aaron. So the question is, does unemployment count as income for a targeted EIDL application?
I would have to look into that. I know the targeted EIDL, that was a sort of a new program that kind of piggybacked on the original SBA loans. And I'm not sure if unemployment counts toward that. I'll have to look that up and get back to you.
And I think there were some additional questions that we did see come through. I'm like trying to find all of our questions, Hannah. Don't mind me as questions come on through. And again, if you do have questions, one more. Yeah.
If you want to look, while you're looking, I'll just read out this last one, Aaron, as well. Kind of a follow-up. It says, do you know if Louisiana is planning on implementing the MEUC unemployment benefit for mixed income earners? And I'll be honest, I do not even know what that is. So I'm glad it's a question for Aaron and not me.
So as of right now, so pre-COVID, if you were self-employed, you were not eligible for unemployment benefits. You were only eligible based on you getting laid off from a job where you got a W-2. Well, COVID, the CARES Act changed that. And so that has been extended through September. So, if you're self-employed, you're now eligible for unemployment benefits. Now, MEUC, I also not familiar with exactly what that stands for. But I do know as of right now, through September, self-employed people are eligible in Louisiana to file for unemployment. So that's definitely true. I'm not sure what the MEUC stands for.
Boyana, would you like to?
Yeah, could you unmute, Boyana?
Because we're getting deep into the acronym soup here.
Yeah, hi, thanks. So the MEUC was part of the law that was passed in December for mixed income earners who earn both a W-2 and like self-employed income as well. So in the December law, it was left up to the states. It wasn't mandated that every state implement this, but a lot of states did. And Louisiana had said that they would implement it. It would be in the form of like $100 weekly extra bonus, I suppose, benefit. So, you know, at the time, like the Louisiana federal stimulus benefit would be 300, and for mixed income earners, it would be 400. And it was supposed to be retroactive. And then Louisiana said that they would implement it, and then nothing happened. So just wondering if you knew if they're gonna do it, or if they've given up on that, or if there's any info or anything like that. Thank you.
Yikes.
Yeah, I got you, and I'm doing a quick Google search. I'm not seeing an update on that, so I guess that's still in the works. It looks like the Ella program was sort of campaigning to get that done, but yeah, I don't think they've done it yet, and I'm not sure that's gonna happen.
A couple quick things in terms of resources. You just mentioned the Ella project. They're definitely on the list. Ashley, can we maybe?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I do want to, I found one of the questions that was in the chat earlier. So I wanted to just bring that up while I have it here on my screen. There was a question earlier. I filed only one W-2 on the EZ form in 2019. And in 2020, I have 2 W-2s, one from unemployment and only one 1099 in 2020. Should I file a Schedule C?
Yeah, so if you get a 1099, then that requires you to report that income on a Schedule C. So yeah, anytime you get a 1099, the new form this year used to be a 1099 MISC for miscellaneous, but now it's a 1099 NEC, non-employee compensation. So if you get a 1099 NEC, then you report that on Schedule C. So yeah, you would have to.
Thank you, Aaron.
And I wanted to kind of, I guess this is a sort of extended, or a question that kind of can extend in a lot of different directions, which is just about the idea, and this kind of again goes back to like making taxes less scary, filing an extension in terms of giving yourself some time and some kind of relieving some of that pressure. Aaron or anyone else, any sort of tips for filing that extension to then give yourself some extra months in which to kind of, you know, peruse these resources and find the right people to help you?
Yeah. So for this year, this is actually not COVID related. It's the winter storm that, you know, mainly hit Texas with the blackouts and affected Louisiana also. The IRS gave, I think it was Oklahoma, Texas, and Louisiana an automatic extension until June. So if you live in one of those states, you have until June 15th to file this year. So that frees up some time. Typically, you know, it's due April 15th. You have to file an extension by then. You know, so future years, be aware, April 15th to date. You file an extension, that gives you an extra 6 months to file your return. But one thing that a lot of people don't realize, you can only extend your time to file your taxes. You cannot extend your time to pay your taxes. So what that means is if you file and you end up filing your return in October,
I think Aaron may have broken up just a little bit. He's frozen on my screen, and so we'll give him a second to come on back. Aaron, your screen froze like right at the peak of that.
Okay. Okay. I'm not sure what all you guys heard, but
It was the
main thing I
part.
was saying was if because of the winter weather, they automatically extended everyone to June 15th this year. So so then that gives us a couple extra months. Normally you need to file an extension by April 15th. But that gives you some time.
Aaron.
And-
Kat, yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say one other thing, like the EIDL question from earlier. I would, if anyone that got that, just a little summary on that. That was something that was back in when the pandemic first started. They gave out at that point, it was supposed to be a $10,000 grant. Well, they ended up only giving you $1,000 per employee. So if you apply for the EIDL and you're self-employed, they only give you $1,000. They've since gone back and said, no, we should have given you the full 10,000, but you need to reapply for that. So I would suggest if you only got the first 1,000, go apply for that, the additional 9,000. There's some caveats. You have to be in a certain area, and I'm not sure all the rules, but it doesn't hurt to apply. So that's on the SBA's website to apply for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. And I wanted to give a question to Kathy in regards to PPP. If we have folks on this call that are applying for PPP for the first time, for the first draw PPP, is that something that is a service offered from Hope that we can connect them with you for?
So it was a service that was offered, as I indicated, when they extended the deadline beyond March the 31st. We did not reopen the portal, but we possibly could. So I could pass on that information once I get it, or you can always check our website.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Are there any additional questions? I feel like there have just been such great questions this evening. If there aren't, Kathy and Aaron, we want to thank you again for providing your expertise. And Hannah and I are actually going to just kind of walk folks through the final piece of this, which is the resource guide that we've put together. So thank you again, Aaron. Thank you, Kathy. We really appreciate your guidance and expertise.
My pleasure. Mhm.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. And so I did drop in the chat just a moment ago. You'll have the resource guide in the chat. We did want to make y'all aware of some really wonderful offerings that are in there, including, I actually want to pass the baton on over to John, who is on this call, who is offering some office hours. John, do you mind just talking a little bit more about your office hours that you're offering? Wait, I can. There we go.
I'm really better at what I'm going to be talking about than I am at technology. But Hannah had approached me about, or Ashley, one of the two of you, about offering some offline help. Hannah and I are part of the Musicians Council on Fair Wages. And we had thought about putting on a similar seminar. This was an excellent thing. I was glad to hear all the things that were said today. Aaron, nice to meet you. Kathy, nice to meet you. So rather than doing our own seminar, what I'm offering is office hours. I think tomorrow, and I don't remember what my times were, but it's part of the sheet. I am a licensed attorney in Wisconsin. I have represented people in front of the IRS. I have done some tax preparation, certainly not as much as Aaron probably did this morning. So I can address some tax questions, some business organization questions. Aaron, I thought you did a nice job with the, do you need an LLC? And I agree with you. Sometimes it's the right thing, sometimes it helps, sometimes it does not. Anyway, if you have those sorts of questions, I'm going to have 3 hours over 2 days this week, 3 hours over 2 days next week. And I'm not at all sure that we have a system of how this is going to work. So Hannah, that was your job, right? No.
Well, so I actually wanted to use that moment and I guess sort of zoom out a little bit just for anybody who's not super familiar with spreadsheets. The thing that Ashley just sent has a bunch of different information in it. And if you open it and you look across the bottom, there's different little labels, they're called tabs. And one of them says orgs and individuals providing tax help / prep. So if you're kind of like wandering around in that list and you're like, wait, this is just a list of, food assistance, like that's why, is that if you kind of scroll sideways across the bottom. So John is the top thing on that tab of orgs and individuals providing tax help. And his contact info is in there. And is also now in the chat as well. So basically,
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm going to start out doing, and we'll see how popular I am or how popular the topic is, but if you want to get a hold of me, email me and we'll set up a Zoom conference. If there are a bunch of you, we'll have a big Zoom conference. But I'll be available during those hours. So email me first. And if there's a discussion going on, we'll make you part of that. Otherwise, we'll set something up. And I'll be happy to try and answer any questions that you've got about your personal situation. But I might be directing a lot of people back to Aaron and Kathy.
This is the train station metaphor of you got to just figure out where you're going. And sometimes you got to stop at the help desk and ask for help. I wanted to just, I guess, run down the rest of the folks on that particular tab of the spreadsheet. There's another tax preparation service, and one of the reasons why we included them, thank you, John, by the way, I meant to say that. But yeah, one of the reasons why we included this American Tax Pros LLC is just because she specifically said that she specializes, one, in musicians and self-employed and culture folks, and two, in help for those who have never filed or have received, letters from the IRS that feel really scary. So that is a resource that's in there as well. And obviously this time of year is incredibly busy for folks who work in this field. But again, in terms of finding the folks to reach out to deal with something that feels overwhelming, that's a great resource. And then the Ella Project, which does all sorts of legal and business help for musicians, not tax specific, but in terms of stuff like help with unemployment or an LLC. And then Ms. Kathy is in there as well. Also listed in there is the entire list from the New Orleans Regional Black Chamber of Commerce, because one thing that did come up in the registration form a couple of times actually was folks specifically seeking out BIPOC accounting professionals. And so we wanted to try to amplify that list here as well. So if that's something that you would like to specifically look at, we have both their list of accountants and then also their website is listed there too.
And some additional things we want to make y'all aware of in this document as well are some of the grant opportunities that we know of that are active currently. And so some of these include the Arts Council Individual Artist Relief Grants, which is up to $1,500. Thank you again, Kathy. Kathy's contact is in the chat. We appreciate you joining us. So the Arts Council grant, which was announced pretty recently, it's due on April 16th. If you have not gotten in the Jazz and Heritage Music Industry Relief Grant, that is due this evening. So you have a little bit of time to get it in. There is also the Studio in the Woods Relief Residency, which is for New Orleans-based artists who have never participated in an artist residency. This actually provides folks with $1,000 stipend, 1 to 2 week residency, staff support, full room and board, including food, utilities for living, and a studio space, which is a really great program right now. And one program that we did want to kind of pre-announce, that we got permission to pre-announce, is the National Performance Network's Take Notice Fund, which will be officially opening on May 1st. And so this is a $5,000 grant, and it's specifically designed for BIPOC artists. There will be more information forthcoming, but we did just want to make folks aware that this is an opportunity that is coming up. Some other items that are also in the resource guide is just some reminders about the rental assistant program that's available, as well as the current eviction moratorium, which is still in effect until June 30th, and some wonderful pro bono legal assistance to assist with any issues as they arise to COVID-19 related issues and just general pro bono legal services, including with the Ella Project. Hannah, do you want to touch on the food piece, the food assistance?
Yes, sorry, I was trying to in real time add Erin's contact info into the spreadsheet, and I was
Love it.
getting confused. Yeah, so the food, we included food resources because food insecurity is something that has just sort of woven through every facet of the community this year. And there's a couple different things listed, including community fridges, which have been a massive sort of, I guess, example of, you know, mutual aid and community helping community. There's a couple of food pantries mentioned, including Second Harvest Food Bank. And then in particular, I wanted to touch on Culture Aid NOLA, which is twice a week, free, absolutely no questions asked, no barriers, food aid, grocery aid. And the information is all in this sheet. And the thing about Culture Aid that is sort of particularly notable is that you can pick up for other folks. You just show up and you say how many households you are getting for. And so if you have, you know, folks in your circle who are, you know, who have mobility issues or you know, elders or just folks who, you know, need food aid, or you want to carpool. And I will actually say that I have recently learned that the car line at the Culture Aid distributions has been a mile long each time, which is really striking on a number of levels. So I would actually recommend kind of coordinating and doing pickups for, you know, a number of houses in your neighborhood if you can. But again, these are all resources that are available, and we wanted to continue to amplify them, either for folks on this call or for folks on this call to have that knowledge to then spread out into, you know, all of your own circles as well. So that's the food aid and the housing.
I think the last thing is the webinars.
There's only a couple things on the webinars tab. As we find out more, we will definitely add to it. One is a Q&A session, thing that was recorded last year about the PPP in particular, Paycheck Protection Plan. The other one on there is the YouTube channel of an organization that I only just discovered, which is the Texas Accountants and Lawyers for the Arts. And I love that this is a thing. Hi, Dolly the cat on Ashley's screen. Anyways, having looked through their YouTube channel, it looks like there's a ton of stuff on there. Again, some of it may be Texas specific, but there's a ton of stuff that is, you know, federally relevant or generally relevant. Stuff about even like the legalities of live streaming. So if you have any questions, it may be worth poking around on there. It looks like they've really been working hard to create content to be helpful. And again, that's the Texas Accountants and Lawyers for the Arts, which is, makes me so happy that that exists.
It's really awesome. Well, and that is actually kind of the quick overview of everything we have here. There is a cat tail on my screen as we wrap up and conclude today. I just want to take a moment to thank all of our wonderful speakers today, including Erin Reddy, Margie Perez, Derek Freeman, Kathy Saloy, Jonathan Olson, who's offering his services this week and next week. Thank you so much. And, you know, to all of the organizations that help support and make this possible. We actually will be doing more series similar to this on different topics as it relates to kind of what healthy communities are. And so our next session will be on civic health. Think a little bit more on the advocacy front, and that will be taking place the last weekend of April. Not weekend, the last week of April, if I could use words right. And this group will also be launching a collaborative data project fairly soon as a piece for advocacy and to really advocate for the larger music, arts, and cultural community called the Artist Census. So more details will be coming out soon. This webinar will be available on YouTube for rewatching. We'll be sending this out hopefully by tomorrow Thursday at the latest. So be on the lookout. We'll also resend all of the information that was shared on this call today. Thank you again to everyone for joining us, and we hope you have a great rest of your evening. Thanks so much, y'all.
Good night, y'all.